Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Joining us now is Mr. David Rockman, member and chair of the environmental law practice for Eckert Seamans. David focuses not only on compliance, but also in defending clients facing enforcement actions and environmental litigation. Today, he's going to be visiting with us about reopening closed buildings, specifically around Legionella and other environmental risks. David, what a timely topic. Glad you could join us. Take it away.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. Yes, good morning, everyone. Welcome. My topic today is environmental and health risks from reopening closed buildings. First slide, please. Here's what we're going to be looking at this morning. First and primary topic is dangers from stale and stagnant water in a closed building. Focusing on Legionella, but also the risk of heavy metals leaching into the water. We'll also talk a little bit about mold and how mold can take hold unnoticed in closed buildings, either through water coming in through intrusion, leaks in the roof or in windows, water getting in ways that it is not supposed to, as well as water contributing to mold from plumbing leaks and condensation or excess humidity within a building. And then finally, we'll spend a minute on asbestos, which I think is an overlooked aspect of the practicalities of reopening a closed building. Next slide. And what do I mean when I say a closed building? Well, obviously, I'm talking in the first instance about any building that has been fully closed, shut down, no activity going on during the pandemic. But we're also talking about portions of a building that have been placed out of service. So in the hotel world, if due to decreased demand, you've got a floor or a wing that's out of service and not being used, all of the concerns we're talking about here can apply, as well as other sort of specialty areas of a hotel. So restaurants and bar areas that may have been closed or out of service for an extended period of time. Other special features, ballrooms and conference centers, probably not being used in some areas due to restrictions on large gatherings of people. In any case, what we're really focused on is anywhere you've got water sitting in the pipes, not flowing, no one's drawing on that water. So the same water that was there 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, or longer is still sitting right there in the pipes, and that can lead to problems. We're also talking about areas of buildings where inspection and maintenance activities, observations for problems aren't happening as they normally would, and that's how your water intrusion issues might not get noticed. Certainly hotel properties have plenty of plumbing and plumbing fixtures, and in normal times you've got a whole group of people who are actually paying for the privilege of coming into the rooms and telling you whether or not you've got a problem there. All of that is gone in the closed portions of a building, so that check and balance isn't there to help us spot water issues. Next slide. Okay, let's talk for a minute about Legionella and actually in broader terms, just the risk that you'll have growth of bacteria or biofilms. And biofilms is sort of a polite word for icky, sticky, slimy biological growth that can happen in pipes or on fixtures. So, sinks, shower heads, etc. The most prominent example of this, on the highest headline, Legionella bacteria, which causes Legionnaires disease, notorious for an outbreak at a hotel in Philadelphia in the mid-1970s during an American Legion convention, hence the name. We're all too familiar these days with talking about mortality rates associated with diseases. Legionnaires has about a 10% mortality rate, so it is very serious stuff when there's an outbreak. But our concern here is stagnant water developing the right conditions for bacteria to grow. Normally, when you have water coming in from your public water authority, your city water, it's got a level of disinfectant in it that's deliberate. The water authorities intend to provide some amount of residual, and it's chlorine usually, but residual disinfectant in the water to help prevent the growth of bacteria as that water travels from the water authority to the end user. But as that water becomes stationary in the pipes, that disinfectant level will naturally drop over a short period of time. And at the same time, you've got temperature changes that are likely to happen. Normally you have hot water and cold water. The cold water is as it comes in, the hot water is heated there at the property. but as that water sits and stagnates, the hot water will cool down a bit. The cool water may warm up a bit, especially depending on where the building is located and what's happening there with cooling systems, et cetera. And with the end result that you get the temperature being right in the growth zone for bacteria. So in the case of Legionella, it's got a temperature sweet spot, if you will, in the upper 70s to a little over 100 degrees. Very easy for water in a dormant part of the building to end up, especially in the summer months, end up somewhere in that temperature range, and just providing the right circumstances for the growth of the bacteria. What do you do to prevent this? Two tools. The first, CDC recommends having a water management plan, and that's sort of a comprehensive document that looks at your water sources, your distribution within a property, who's responsible for inspection and maintenance, how do you keep it safe, how do you make sure that you don't create the conditions where Legionella or other biological growth can occur. That's all well and good. That's really good advice. The problem is, though, on the whole, how many properties have this? Not very many. It's rare to see this, unfortunately. Maybe the current episode that we're going through will inspire or encourage properties to move down that path, and it is good advice from the CDC to do so. But if you don't have a water management plan, the midst of a reopening process with all that's going on is not the world's best time to try to develop one. The sort of bottom line practical advice is to flush the systems there, move out all the potentially contaminated and problematic water, let that come out, go down the drain, and replace it all with a flush of fresh water. Now, when you're doing the flushing, you have to think broadly in two respects, really. First, you want to clean out all of the stagnant water. So if you have let's say, a closed floor, you can't go onto that floor, maybe go down the end, turn on the tap in one of the rooms in the sink, and think that you've cleared the problem. You haven't. Well, maybe you have for that one sink, but that's it. So again, on our example of a closed floor, you need to go to all of the rooms and all of the taps. So we're talking sinks, showers, toilets. You want to flush all of them. You need to flush all of them. And then you can't be focused too much just on the rooms, although that's the obvious spot where guests come most into contact with the water, but you have to deal with all uses of water in a property. So, all the employee areas, public restrooms, drinking water fountains, of course, all need to be addressed. Swimming pools and hot tubs may get filled anew, and while those will hopefully be chlorinated and thereby addressed in some manner, you don't want to start out with a problematic water to begin with. Not a good base to start from, not good for your employees to be exposed to that. And then finally, don't forget about architectural or cosmetic features such as water fountains, pools, waterfalls, whatever you might have in a lobby or a courtyard. Decorative, but also dealing with the same water supply and also presenting many of the same issues. Next slide. Another sort of secondary concern we have with the stagnant water is that water as it stands and sits there in the pipes can leach metal out of the pipes and out of the fixtures. Lead and copper are the primary metals of concern. Plenty of copper pipe everywhere. Lead more likely to be found in older buildings than newer buildings. But this is nevertheless a potential problem for the stagnant water you would not want to be exposed to, and in particular not be drinking that water. The water that comes in from the public water supply in some areas will have an anti-corrosive in it that's intended to help combat this problem. But just like the chlorine residual on the bacterial side, those anti-corrosives will degrade as the water sits there and is stagnant and will no longer have any effect. The solution here is exactly the same as we mentioned before. You want to flush the system, get rid of all of that water that's have any metals impact, and move to fresh water before anybody uses the system. Next slide, please. Let's also talk for a minute about mold. Mold in the air around us as we breathe, even though we can't see it. But when it takes root, it can cause property damage and health concerns. Mold, I think everybody knows, caused by excess moisture, and you can get that from water coming in from the outside or from active leaks within a building. Lack of ventilation, lack of fresh air coming through, lack of dehumidification from running the air conditioning. What do you need to do? Well, the CDC again recommends you should assess and inspect your property before people come back into it, determine whether or not there is a mold problem. At the best end, you hire a certified professional to do that assessment. Otherwise, you do need people familiar with the property to, check out the property, and that's a visual inspection. It can be an odor inspection as well, often easier to find mold through odor than by visual means. Also use tools such as moisture meters to detect moisture levels in the walls or behind the walls. Use those tools before bringing people back into the property. If there is a mold issue, the CDC recommends flushing out the HVAC system, so running it for 48 to 72 hours just to get fresh air moving through that system first. Next slide. And a final issue here with, I wanted to mention on asbestos. Asbestos is in building products. It's dangerous when there's exposure and you're breathing in the asbestos. By and large, any property that has asbestos should already have an asbestos management plan, although I'll admit many properties that don't actually have such a plan. But OSHA rules require communication to employees in a building about the presence of asbestos and require that the asbestos be properly managed. Where this becomes an issue with reopening a closed building is you may find yourself having employees or other personnel in parts of the building that they're not normally in, doing unusual tasks down in the bowels of the building, again, HVAC systems, boilers, etc., doing tasks they don't normally do that might bring them into contact with asbestos in ways that they are not notified about or trained to handle properly, all of which is both problematic for them and potentially a violation of the OSHA rules. So as you reopen a building, don't forget about the asbestos angle either. And with that, I thank you for your attention and wish you good luck in reopening your properties.
Thank you, David. That was great information. Everybody, you'll want to join David for his deeper dive roundtable so he can give you some additional insight on these very important issues. David, before I cut you loose, I've got a very quick question, just in case it doesn't come up in the roundtable conversation. We're seeing a lot of insurance companies deny claims around COVID. In your experience, are these concerns that you've raised today, is there typically coverage for hotels and restaurants that run into some of these challenges? I use the word typically. I know it's going to be a diverse response given the policy, et cetera.
Yeah, there certainly can be. I would say that you're going to get a range of responses. I guess the good news is that these type of claims come up from time to time, but they're not typical. There are exclusions in many policies that insurance companies can rely on to avoid providing coverage. And certainly I think experience says that if there is a sudden wave of claims, the insurance industry will do its best to find a way to avoid those claims. Even if they were just one-offs, they might not fight so hard or not try so hard to avoid those claims. So it's a little bit hit and miss on that, unfortunately, Stephen.
Okay, well, that's good to know, and I'm sure the audience appreciates that. And one last thing popped into my mind. What about restaurant kitchens and or food and beverage operations in the hotels? Anything, I know you talked about the water management plan and the flushing. Anything in particular around those kitchens that you see that we need to pay special attention to?
No, what really comes to mind is more sort of a health department sanitation issue that the kitchens, even if they've been out of service for a while, need to be fully cleaned, probably a deep cleaning before you start because it's not getting the routine cleaning from operations. So it's not a particularly unique risk to being closed or due to COVID, but just anytime you're doing food prep or anything like that in an environment where you need to keep it clean, you need to pay special attention to making sure that you achieve that target before you start operations again.
That's great, David. Thanks again, everybody. Please be sure to join David for his deeper dive. There will be some great info there. David, have a great day. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.